to the Women's Talk Social Commentary Art Show. So the Woman Talk Art Series has now branched out into a talk show, and we will be discussing issues that have been brought out within the artwork with persons from the community. Today, I am here with Terneille Burrows. She is an activist, she is a musician, she is a politician, and she is also the founder of Rise Bahamas. I am your host and artist, Carla Campbell. Welcome, Ms. Terneille. Let's give Ms. Terneille a welcome.
Thank you very much.
So today we want to talk about a particular piece called Women, Politics, and Red Tape. Let's talk about this piece first, because I know that you have had experience in politics. Tell me about that experience. I mean, as a female in the Bahamas in politics, what was that like for you?
People always say politics is a dirty game. Why would you ever contemplate getting into it? And I simply ask, if not me, then who? Because the person that I voted for the one time, after all these 32 years of living, that I decided, okay, I'll just vote in 2012, said and did something in the House of Parliament where I helped to put him that I found to be diametrically opposed to what they are put in Parliament to do and say. So I just got to the point where a lot of indicators and a lot of advocacy efforts around child protection and prioritizing issues like this in the Bahamas weren't being taken seriously. So I said, at very least, I will have a dedicated audience that when I knock on their door in Elizabeth constituency and they ask me who I is, they can let me in, because Bahamians like politics, and I could get to tell them about the platform of child protection and other things.
So when you first got into your version of politics, your activist platform, what was one of the things that really was your passion? What were some of the things that you wanted to see happen?
When I came back home, around 2009, I heard reports that a 5-month-old baby girl had been raped and died. Later on, they said it didn't happen, but there was outrage, and 10,000 people that I put the word out to with a group of women that decided to start Bahamas Sexual Violence and Child Abuse Prevention were outraged and wanted to know, what could we do to prevent this? Because at a certain point, we have to start taking responsibility as society, because we could sit back and just let things happen and say, oh, well, it wasn't my child, it wasn't my niece, it wasn't my goddaughter. Why should I give a rat's tail?
So you didn't let any of that discourage you? You didn't let that
political
red tape?
Yes, it discouraged me every day. Doing music in the Bahamas discouraged me every day. But I was resilient, and I just said, I'm not going to let it get to me to the extent where I stop doing what I love or what I do well or what I'm passionate about.
So would that be your, I guess, advice to other persons maybe wanting to get into politics? Because a lot of times people feel, unless you have all of this money, unless you're a doctor or you're a lawyer, why should I get into politics? That's just something for someone else to do. And they may have really great ideas.
I say when your motivation is pure, when you have taken the time to develop whatever it is that your craft is, or research and immerse yourself in your advocacy causes, when you get to that point, yeah, run for office, because it would be nice to have a track record. Don't just come out of obscurity like half the MPs we got now. I'm just going to be real in the Bahamas. We have been laid back and sat there and observed too much foolishness for too long. Then the airways open up whenever they open up. Then we start talking plenty. Oh, this and that. This is what the government need to do. Oh, this is my issue, blah, blah, blah. We haven't gotten to the place, though, in the decades since that, to where we actually activate, mobilize, systematically do what we need to do, whether it's volunteers, activists, advocates, people who donate because they don't want to be in the forefront, but they want to be behind the scenes like, yeah, go do the thing. That's what I had to do. I raised $25,000 to fund my life and campaign to run, and I probably got about $75,000 of in-kind donations for market research, hurricane supplies, and things like that.
So this is something that other people can do themselves?
Yes.
So when I think about this piece, right?
Let's talk about this.
Yeah, I was looking at the women's suffrage movement, and I know that you've had a lot of work with Marion Bethel, who's done a film on the women's suffrage movement, and if there was one group of women who could not afford to be discouraged or could not afford to have them say, okay, I don't want to deal with it, that's someone else's problem, it was these groups of women. Could you tell me a little bit about how that was working with you and what was your role? And
when I learned about the women's suffrage movement as an adult, less than a decade ago, and I'm 38, I was just astounded. The biggest thing that astounded me was that people had the gumption who were less than what we treated now in society as women in their mind of the law and societal norms. They had the gumption to say, look, yeah, we sick and tired. Are y'all thinking we don't have a say in this country because we do this and we do that and we are equal and we are human beings? And they got thousands and thousands of women to sign on to this petition. Women who might not have been literate, women who might not have understood the jargon that they were spewing about rights and things like that. They trusted them, though. They trusted those leaders because they had a track record of community involvement, and they made their mark. Unfortunately, we had a referendum the other day that was hijacked by all other kind of things that had nothing to do with ensuring that under the law, because I am equal with any man in here.
yes.
I'm equal with any child in here. I'm equal with anybody from any race in here. Equal under God or the universe or whatever. But under the law, we need that specified. And the work that they did in the women's suffrage movement suffered, pun intended, because we as Bahamian people didn't run with it the way that we needed to run with it and let it translate into just human rights generally and responsibility and political will to actually do what needs to get done.
Yes, I think that is a message that, that really speaks to me as well, is that we can do it. One voice is powerful. Yeah. Oh, me and Mike's. One voice is very, very powerful. The things that we can do collectively.
This drawing I made shows the most vulnerable among us, branded as prey, holding on through the pain, generation after generation. The voice of today's youth, speaking out on issues such as these, is heard loud and clear by high school poet Paige Ramming in her original poem entitled Not My Fault.
All alone, I would sit and cry, wondering why I just won't let myself die. I would lay on my bed, covering my head, trying to get that horrid thought out of my head. I have this bad memory that abuses me. I can't get it out of my mind because it's affecting me. I pray tonight it just falls asleep, so here in silence I may weep. I didn't ask to be a victim, but I can't help but to feel trapped inside a system. I wish that I can let go of everything and just fly high. But I won't let anyone say that it was my fault, because it wasn't. Not at all.
When the parents are deported and cut out of the lives of their children, this artwork asks, what will happen to them? What of the children? We'll be right back. This portrait of my son speaks of the hope we felt when we occupied Rawson Square during the first We March protest. Welcome back.
When we look at our next clip, this is where we kind of partnered together when we had the protest posters that were made up for the 2015 independence.
Okay,
yeah,
before
let's talk
we go
about
there,
that.
because I have to brace myself for that. Let's go back to the women's one, right? Because that to me felt like it was just like when I looked at that, I'd seen that for the first time a couple nights ago when this show premiered, right? I knew the other one from before.
Yeah.
But when I looked at that, it was just like, what an excellent depiction of what we're going through. And I heard a statement made by someone before that we have the red carpet rolled out for the foreigners, foreign direct investors, anybody else. And what do we got for us? What do we got?
We have a carpet?
Red tape for Bahamians. What's going on with that? But all I can say is, if we allow it, then we deserve it.
I'm glad you went back to that point, because the opposition, their nominees for leader, when Loretta Butler Turner stepped forward to try and become the leader of the opposition, I thought she was well qualified, she was well spoken, and instead of those being the main issues, it seemed as if the main issue was her emotional state. Oh, if she becomes leader, will she be able to handle the pressures? Because, you know, women are so emotional. It seemed as if all of the conversation was more about her womanness as opposed to her qualifications. You saw it again when Glenys Hannah Martin had her time. And the same conversations were repeated. You could look across the waters and you could look at the American elections, and it was the same attitude that was repeated. I know that we've come a long way from the era of the women's suffrage movement, and yes, we can vote, and yes, we do have a lot of rights, and all that we've made great strides, and I'm not saying that to you know, negate anything, but it seems as if women were at the forefront of saying that other women should not be leaders. Why do you think that this is a conversation that is in a cycle, that is something that keeps going on? You hear it again and again, you hear it across the waters about this idea that women in positions of power are not able to balance their emotional state along with their, you know, gumption of what they have to do.
I'm not sure what it is, and I am not the type of person that tries to answer something that I don't know the answer to. So what I will say is, instead, I'll paint a picture. Being a rock star, an artist or whatever, you realize that these rock bands, they go in there and I forget what they do. What you call it when you fall back into the crowd? That thing. Mosh pit and the crowd surf. Let me paint a picture for y'all. We got politicians and we got pastors, and the majority of them are men. You agree? The vast majority of the people who are in the forefront, the rock stars, are men, and whatever. That's what we decided on, voted for, that's what we allow. But at the end of the day, when they freaking out and do their rock star-ish, and they do that crowd surf, who you think in the audience holding them up? The women are there as the stalwarts, as the leaders, as the providers, as the nurturers, as every component you can think of. If the women left the church, and if the women left politics in the Bahamas, what would happen? That is all I have to say about this quest for us to be realized and appreciated as equals among men.
A few years ago, Terneille and I partnered together to create protest posters for the 2015 Independence Day silent protest. And this was the piece that I shared with Terneille in my living room, and I showed this piece to her, and I could see the connection that she and this piece had together. And I knew that I had to do some work with Terneille and this piece. And then she started to tell me about her efforts and what she was doing. And I think we were just like, yeah, let's do it. We went to a copy place and we got a copy. I mean, it was real renegade fashion. Got some plywood and glued the paper on. I mean,
and then we had to roll it up and like hold it under our sleeve and walk like at attention to go into Independence and pass the police so that they wouldn't realize that a protest or a demonstration was going to happen. And then stand up for 4 hours with someone who was gracious enough to say, don't worry, we ain't going to arrest y'all. And do the Marco's Law demonstration at Clifford Park during the Independence celebration, 2015.
And that was 2015, and that was a moment. I think it was on the news, and they showed other posters there that had words that were saying, you know, how long? Where's
Marco's Law? We've heard the PLP and the F&M both talk about it and say that it's going to happen, and it's been happening for 5 years now.
But can you give us just a little brief explanation of exactly what is Marco's Law?
So, in 2011, an 11-year-old boy named Marco Archer was brutally murdered by a man. And the then opposition member of parliament, Dr. Bernard Nordich, outcried that the F&M administration could have dealt with that case a lot more quickly, could have had an Amber Alert type system, could have done this, could have done that. So at the time, 2011, September, I believe, he proposed a Marco's Alert and a sex offender registry as a complement of bills to propose to Parliament that were actually passed in 2013 and became law. We have had a number of missing children since that time, and I have never seen one single solitary Marco's Alert. We ain't even touched the sex offender registry yet, but that's what it is.
The Nassau Guardian, this was Wednesday, May 16th, girls sexually assaulted. They have composite sketches.
Assaulted?
By,
or raped?
Wait, let's just read what they actually have here. These composite sketches were released by the Royal Bahamas Police Force in connection to the sexual assault incidents. You know, these are very nice terms, but in reality, the two persons, one was 8 and the other was 12. They, according to the news, were assaulted after school. So here now you have persons who are entrusting their child to walk home, perhaps right round the corner, after school from point A to point B, and get home safely. And I've worked in a primary school before where this happens, and they go from right one spot to the next. And for me, in order for you to know that this particular child is not a child who is getting in a car to go home, and to know the distance of where this person is going and where you can assault them, you had to been studying them. You had to watch them. This is a sick individual. I don't know how long it's going to take for the Bahamas, the government of the Bahamas, regardless of whatever political party that you belong to, I don't know what it's going to take before we can get something as simple as Marco's Law done.
I would like to see us do whatever efforts we can to ensure that children don't have to be subject to the amount of molestation, rape, abuse, beatings, and things that they are. So Marco's Alert is one component, and that's more of a detection and public engagement component as opposed to prevention. There are so many facets that we have to look at. We have to look at a sex offenders registry, like we said. We have to look at a separate family court to be established to deal with those issues that the Crisis Center has been advocating for since 2012, I believe, and a separate sexual offenses court to deal with those issues. And we need to ensure that the Child Protection Council and other agencies like the Crisis Center are properly funded. They have the resources. They have the prioritization of the government. These are the kind of things we need to ensure are in place. And then a public awareness campaign, too.
Yes, because a lot of persons in the public, they're not really crying for those things right now because they're coming from a very emotional place. I've heard it said that with regards to this article, that they're hoping that the police finds him first, because a lot of persons are so angry and so hurt, and they're putting themselves in that situation. What if that was my daughter? Boy, if that was my daughter, there would be another headline on the paper.
But we laughing at the girl getting beat half to death on social media. I don't buy it, Bahamians. I'm sick of this full outrage.
So
if you want to do something, don't turn yourself into a criminal to match their actions. Find a way to involve yourself that makes sense, that is legal and is productive. I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. Bahamians talking about they're going to be vigilantes. That's garbage. Let the law do what it's meant to do, and if you don't think the law is right or doing what it's meant to do, get involved in advocacy, volunteer with a group that you think is doing the work. There are many, many groups out there. Don't sit back and then just take the easy road out and say, well, no, unacceptable.
The fear of education denied because of improper immigration documents brought tears to my students' eyes. We'll be right back. The historic changing moment of VAT shown in this drawing shows the one thing that seems to be VAT-free: a mother's love.
Do we have any questions or from the audience? Is there anyone who have any questions? We have a microphone.
Well, my name is Sasha Bristol. What you said was really nice. I don't think I can come back after that, but I have an actual question. How do you feel about the actual public embarrassment of convicted, concrete evidence sex offenders when it comes towards Marco's law, or I guess rule?
Okay, you're gonna have to work with me on this. How do I feel about public embarrassment of the convicted offender? As in,
they've already been convicted of the crime, right. Concrete evidence.
Yes, sir.
How would you feel as a part of their sentencing? They've been publicly embarrassed, as in stand in front of Rawson Square or something along that lines, to just show that this is what's going to happen to you as a sex offender?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what really deters sex offenders. I don't know if the public embarrassment really has any effect on them. Because once you are convicted, like you said, what I would like to address, though, is related to human rights, the opposite spin on it. Like, you have people who are accused of crimes, and I'm very careful not to share, oh, this person is accused of doing this to a child, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to hear about any accusation. I want to know that the law and the justice system is working properly, and at the point where that conviction is made, because then the determination is that they are either innocent or guilty, and then we go based upon that. Because apparently the lawyer for Marco in his appeal cited some sort of interference because of the unusual media attention that was put on it, and certain spins that might have been put on it for political gain from the other side or whatever, to make the case more sensational than it was or something like that. So we have to be careful about how we treat people convicted of crimes and make sure that the process is followed properly, because you don't want them coming back and getting an appeal because we did something wrong and said too much, or we, you know what I'm saying? We have to have a certain responsibility in that way. Did that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
As somebody who is a contributing member of the society, my mind tells me, turn around, find out who they are, where are their parents, why are they in this road, go home. You know, it's little things like that that make the whole lot of difference. People actually checking and caring instead of just driving past. They're not my children. So I would urge for little things like that.
Absolutely.
To make the most difference. And I'll tell you another thing. I used to live in Andros, and it turned out that I lived right next door to a family that had a child molester in their home. And it turns out afterward also that I found out that one of the children that was in there was being molested, was being abused right there. The child, I would see the child, a small child, walking up and down the road holding this man's hand. I thought that was her grandfather, you know, only to discover, and guess when I discovered it? One day I sent my son to walk to the shop, because I'm saying, okay, I'm on the island, you know, it's cool and calm, and, you know, he can learn to walk to the shop by himself in these types of places. Mm-hmm. And a woman came to me and she said, don't you ever let me see that child walking in the, mind you, the shop from here to where you are. Don't you ever let me see that child walking in the street again. And she pointed out to me, you see that one? You see that one? You see that one? They're the very ones that are abusers in this society. And I asked, I said, well, why has the police not been called? Why does nobody say anything? And you know what she told me? She said, even when, if we say anything, the family rallies around the abusers, they rally around the molesters, Okay, they rally around the rapist, and by the time as it's all over, when they call the superintendent, they call this one and that one and say this one trying to do this to my good family member and all of that, it's all squashed and finished with. So yes, on the point where you're saying allow the law to do what it has to do, the law itself does have its shortcomings. We as a community need to do the little things that make the world of difference.
Thank you so much. And you touched on a point that I didn't want us to forget, because we could talk about Marco's Alert, and we could talk about predators that we see and know that, or don't know. But we don't in the Bahamas talk about those predators that are our family members. Molestation by an incest in the Bahamas is huge. Accepted.
99% of the time is the people right inside your own house or around your children.
Well, we don't want to cite random statistics. But the point has been made, and I will not tolerate it. And the young man in the back has a question. And you know what? First-hand experience, having been molested by my father's youngest brother at the age of 5 years old, has helped bring me to the point where, when I realized that it happened to other people in the family, I realized that I could not, even though I didn't know how to process it once I got older, I could not allow your baby girl and your 2 baby boys to be subject to this kind of thing having happened to me. And I still don't see any movement towards this yet. But we could break it down, we could tear it down, and I ain't gonna be old and gray before it happened. But we need mothers in particular, sisters, supporters, people who aren't afraid to stand up and say, let's take a trip to Acklands, where it happens, and Andres, where you're talking about, and go big and bold in administrators' faces and take social services and take the police and take whatever type of testing need to happen, or reports. We need to start becoming the law, not vigilantes. We need to start being the ones to help to initiate, advocate, agitate the heck out of whoever we need to ensure that this thing doesn't happen. But it takes the first step. Let's get Marco's Alert. Let's get the registry. Then we could tackle all these other things. They think we joking though. How can we show them we ain't joking? When in the Bahamas has there been one time when we showed them we ain't joking? Black Tuesday. It took someone in Parliament too though to make that happen, right? We keep waiting for these saviors to come and just swoop down and deliver us to the promised land. We gonna have to deliver ourselves. We have to band together, because her hand with mine, instead of these 1-2 fingers trying to tickle somebody and tickle the policy makers to make something happen, we got to get a bunch of fingers that make a fist, and then a bunch of fists that hit at that same one spot. Child protection, child protection. We trying to get the economy fixed and crime down and this, that. Child protection affects crime. Crime affects the economy. Let's get a focus, Bahamians, because we scattered like God knows what. One thing is this, 1 minute is this, 1 minute is something else. Can we get some focus? This is attainable. Let's get Marco's Alert. I'm tired of waiting on the government. We could do it our damn self if we have to.
So that ends this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful art talk tonight. Thank you so much, Terneille Burrows, for... Thank you, yes. Thank you for my artwork, yes. Thank you, audience. Give yourselves a round of applause for me, please.